The investment has paid off tremendously. The bank is about 10 times the size that it was when we bought it. The profitability has quadrupled as well.
Hello and welcome to the Bankers Masterclass on Paraguay in association with Sudameris Bank. My name is Silvia Pavoni, I am the economics editor of the Banker, and I'm joined by Sebastian Lahaie, who is the chief executive of Abbeyfield Group. So Seb, thank you for joining me. You've invested in Sudameris, you bought Sudameris about a decade ago. How has the investment paid out?
Well, Silvia, good afternoon. Thank you for having us. The investment has paid off tremendously. The bank is about 10 times the size that it was when we bought it. The profitability has quadrupled as well. So we're very happy to be in Paraguay and looking forward to the next decade.
And how has the whole of the banking sector grown over the past 10 years? Of course, a lot has changed, both in terms of demand from consumers and corporate clients, but also in terms of regulation.
Absolutely. I mean, from an asset perspective, the banking sector has grown eightfold over the last 10 years. Interestingly enough, that growth came primarily from deposits from Paraguayans themselves. So the economy has self-generated that growth in the banking system. About 20%, 15 to 20% of the liabilities of the country in the financial system come from development bank multilaterals, and the rest from Paraguayans and Paraguayan companies that have deposited their money more and more in the local market. There's been, over the last 10 years, an inflow of Paraguayan money that used to be abroad coming back in Paraguay and also helping fuel that growth.
So it's a pretty traditional, stable banking sector, would you say, but which has been growing with the economy. We had fantastic growth over the past years with big double-digit growth, particularly in 2010 and 2013, but now it has a little bit plateaued. So what do you think the impact of this will be on, for example, on performing loans, and are the banks prepared to sustain any potential losses?
I think it's important to say over the last 10 years, a sector that's growing 20%, 15 to 20% on average, of course, there's going to be periods where, you have to absorb such a massive growth. Since 2000 and the end of 2014, we've entered into a stabilizing phase whereby growth in the banking system is not as fast. I personally welcome that slowdown. I think it's healthy to absorb and to pause, to look at what kind of growth that we've generated over the last 4 years and see where it's taking us. This phase of stabilization is happening at the same time where Brazil is slowing down, Argentina is not yet out of the woods. So for Paraguay, it means that instead of growing at an average 5% per year, which is roughly the average of the last 11 years, this year, next year, probably we're going to grow between 3 and 4%, which is below our target. For the banking system, the good thing is for the last 10 years, profitability has been high, capital adequacy has been pretty solid. Banks have built up reserves, both provisions and equity, to absorb an increase in non-performing loans. The good thing is Paraguay experiences economic cycle at a faster pace than other countries. For example, the consumer credit about 7 years ago barely existed. We went through a massive growth phase of 5 years, whereby we went from about 200,000 credit cards to 1.3 million credit cards. But suddenly, people started to experience over-indebtedness, personal indebtedness, and that has slowed down within a matter of 6 months. On top of that, the regulator stepped in through Congress and has put limits on interest rate on credit cards, on commissions. So that part of the sector, of the financial sector, has slowed down dramatically in a very, very short period of time, in a matter of 3 months. So the implication for the banking system is you constantly have to adapt to that new regulation, that new market, but there is enough equity, enough provisionings to absorb those changes. Like you said, it's a very conservative banking system. The most sophisticated banking product is a forward in Paraguay. We don't have derivatives, we don't have capital markets. So that limits the systemic risk for the entire system. And in addition, another good, interesting point is the system is not dependent from external funding to continue to provide for its own liquidity. It's predominantly money from inside Paraguay.
So self-sufficient.
It's self-sufficient, so banks don't have to rely on foreign markets to continue to function.
So we talked about the growth of consumer loans. What about loans and support to small entrepreneurs, which obviously represents the majority of businesses in Paraguay?
Yeah, the line is pretty blurred between personal and SMEs or extremely small SMEs. We look at them as an extension of personal businesses, basically. And that part has slowed down as well. Obviously, when the commodity prices started to decrease at the beginning of 2015, the whole chain got impacted. So the big agriculture companies started to experience a slowdown in their activities, then the small producer in the field, then the provider of fertilizers, and it went down all the way the food chain to the SMEs that are in the cities. However, the growth was such that we're now back to normal levels, I would say. A growth of 3 to 4%, even though it's pretty small for Paraguay, it's still a very healthy growth when you have -4 or 5 in Brazil and still negative growth too in Argentina.
Sure, so all in all, a good story, and there is more to come in the future, but we'll talk about this in the next chapter.
Excellent, thank you.